Hey everybody, I'm back again with another reel. Today I just wanted to talk about being a kid and being overweight and some of the things that I wish I'd have known. So I've been overweight my whole life. Um, I was probably about 250 pounds in middle school. I wrestled and I played football, but I would still gain weight. Um, I would go home and I would eat whatever I wanted. Sometimes even without my parents giving me permission to, they would have snack cakes and cookies and chips and stuff like that in the house because they like to eat them. They could eat them in moderation, but I couldn't. Um, and they did take me to doctor's visits and stuff like that to try to figure out what was going on. And the doctor would put me on specific diets, but I don't even think doctors really knew back then why I was gaining weight the way I was. They would give my parents like the food pyramid and like food ideas and stuff like that. But they never sat down and explained to me how calories worked. That even though I was being active, because I figured that I was playing football, I was wrestling, I was playing sports, I was riding bikes all the time, I was going out and doing all these things. That what I was eating, there was no way that I should be gaining weight. And I was always told, well, it's just you have a slow metabolism. You're just always going to be overweight. Um, and I never realized that what I was putting into my body, the amount of calories that I was eating, there's no way I could have worked it off. Um, I didn't understand how many calories you burn per hour of exercise. I didn't understand, how many calories I was supposed to eat for a kid my age. I didn't understand what foods had what calories. Um, so, and I don't think my parents understood that either. They just ate when they were hungry, and they had a normal grasp of what they were supposed to be eating. Um, but I didn't. And I think it's a good idea to maybe sit down with children and kind of have a base knowledge yourself about what calories are, what exercise, um, you know, burns calories. And I mean, when you're doing a weight loss journey for yourself, determining how many calories you should be eating, it might be a good idea to also get a baseline of what your children's calorie intake should be. Just that way, you can be prepared when you're making their meals how to portion them out. As parents, we don't always think about that. We just think that, we're feeding our kids and that as long as they're fed and they're not hungry, that, you know, we're doing good by them. And I think that sometimes we can be doing harm to them by, overfeeding them. Like, we think we're treating them, giving them, a treat, something nice, but sometimes we can be giving them too much. And sometimes they don't understand that, when they have, you know, a whole candy bar, and then like we go to McDonald's for dinner, and then we, you know, eat potato chips as a snack during the day, that all those little things add up and it can cause us to be overweight. Um, and if we are going on a health journey ourselves, we can set that example for them as far as how much, we're supposed to eat and how important it is to eat properly, um, and to try to eat as many whole foods as possible. I know it's not always possible to, keep them away from potato chips, from candy, and stuff like that because they're so prevalent in our society. But let them know that it's a treat, that it's a once in a while thing, not something that they should indulge in every day. Um, and I can't say that I've always been great with that. Like, I had a terrible diet my whole life, and unfortunately, I think that I passed some of that on to my daughter. I wish I would have, given her a little bit more guidance on food and how to best navigate that. Not that I think that she's overweight or, unhealthy. You know, I just think that I could have explained some of that stuff better if I would have known myself. And I think that it's best to kind of pass that on to our kids, because the more it's important knowledge, and I don't think a lot of people think about it as much, when raising kids. Um, because I mean, unfortunately, there is a childhood obesity epidemic, and you know, kids are mean when you're young, and that can lead to depression, which can lead to depression eating, which I've been guilty of in my life. When I was a kid, I get picked on. Um, I would get, you know, I wouldn't do as good in sports, so I'd get depressed about that, and I would eat. Um, and then it can lead to very dark depression, which in my case, I mean, I would get to a point where I just didn't care anymore about losing weight, and I would just eat whatever I wanted, and it got to the point where I got to 623 pounds, you know, and if I would have known then, if I would have taken the time then to understand calories and how to burn, the calories properly through exercise, how many calories I was supposed to eat as a person of my height, my weight, my gender, you know, maybe I could have stopped it earlier. And if that can be done for anybody, so they don't have to deal with it as a child, I think that's, um, the best thing possible. Uh, and I don't want to come off as like preachy or anything about parents um, feeding their children. I mean, you do what's best for your kids, and I know you're doing your best. Um, but if you can give them those tools to understand um, what calories are, how they work within the body. Um, I think you can set them up with great tools to have a healthy adulthood, and as they do start to become overweight, they can try to correct those things before they get into adulthood, because it's easier when you're a kid. Um, but yeah, just some thoughts about it. Just kind of how I was as a kid, always sneaking junk food and like just thinking I was just eating. I didn't think that, you know, what I was eating could be causing my weight gain, being because it was snacks, chips, cookies, and all those addictive things that I got addicted to it. It became comfort. Um, and maybe if I would have understood then that, yeah, they're comforting, but they're also leading you being in discomfort by being overweight and being healthy. Um, and this by no means is telling you that you should tell your kids that they're fat or that they're overweight or anything like that. I wouldn't explain it like that, because that can lead to shame, and they shouldn't be shamed for being overweight. Um, but try to give them tools to understand what overweight means, what they can do to not be overweight if they don't want to be overweight, um, and of course explain to them why they don't want to be overweight, um, the complications it can lead to later in life, and that it makes it harder, the older you get. But thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.